streaming. Okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavidyan Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good. Good to see you all. Welcome also to all of you watching or attending the Satsang online. We have... Oh, that stopped again. That's twice. Okay. Just keep an eye. You tell me if that stops. That's twice the feed from the camera has stopped. Okay. We have lots of great questions today, so let me get started. First question from Vishaka. If I remember right, she lives in Virginia or Washington. First question from Vishaka. What is the difference between the vairagya of an enlightened person versus a vairagya of an unenlightened person? Vairagya is dispassion. So for an enlightened person, vairagya describes the complete absence of binding desires. It means there's nothing to do. I need to preface my comment. Generally, we consider vairagya a spiritual practice, a value to be cultivated. For an unenlightened person, it's a crucial value to be cultivated, not to get drawn into worldly activities to the extent that you lose out on your spiritual growth. So for that reason, the vairagya of an unenlightened person is having a sufficient goal for spiritual growth that it gets a priority over worldly activities, and therefore you become less intense about pursuing worldly activities. That's a vairagya of an unenlightened person, and that has to be deliberately cultivated and practiced. It doesn't come apne-ap, as you say, by itself. You have to make an effort. It's a practice. On the other hand, the vairagya for an enlightened person is effortless. There's no attraction to do certain things. If you're not attracted to do it, you don't need to do anything. So not attracted to movies, not attracted to this and that, and tasty food, whatever it happens to be, going to restaurants. So if an enlightened person doesn't have those desires, then no problem. Nothing to practice, nothing to do. It's natural. Suppose you invite that enlightened person to a restaurant. Why not? It's not that they have a... by the way, you can have a desire for something. You can have a desire to avoid something. The enlightened person is free from both kinds of desire. Vishka has a second question. When an enlightened person gets cheated or is a victim of injustice, what is the reaction behavior? And she notes that in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is urged to fight against injustice. Of course, Arjuna wasn't enlightened at that point, which is why Sri Krishna had to encourage him to do the right thing. What would an enlightened person do when he or she gets cheated or is a victim of injustice? Well, the enlightened person would do whatever is appropriate. Follow dharma. And every situation is different. Sometimes injustice needs to be met by force. Sometimes injustice needs to be met by, the justice meted out by the courts. Depending on the situation, the enlightened person will respond in a suitable, appropriate way to the injustice. What is the difference, of course, is the enlightened person doesn't get upset. And this is a huge issue. When you become the victim of injustice, how dare you? That kind of very intense emotional reaction. Tell me, does that emotional reaction make it easier for you to handle the situation or more complicated. It complicates the situation, right? Especially if you start shouting back at the person who did the injustice, so the enlightened person is free from all such problems. Next question from Kumar. With your teachings of Vedanta, I'm able to come out of emotions to a certain extent. I think that means to manage your emotions. Recently, I felt cheated, and what a connection. I felt cheated and I was unable to control myself. I expressed anger at the person who cheated me. It disturbed my sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about it. How to overcome emotions, particularly in the context of cheating, or in any context. How to manage your emotions. The long-term solution is the teachings of Vedanta. And Kumar already said that to some measure he's seen the benefit. And what happens is you become less reactive because you feel less threatened. You feel less threatened because you're more connected to that inner truth of who you are, Satchidananda Atma, pure consciousness, which can't be affected by anything, therefore you feel less threatened. So to the extent that you recognize your true nature can't be threatened by anything, to that extent you'll be less reactive. So that's what Kumar is beginning to experience, and that just grows and grows and grows as the teachings of Vedanta go in deeper and deeper and deeper. So one question might be, well, what to do in the meanwhile? So he's got a current situation, what to do in the meanwhile. I think meditation is a great short-term solution for becoming less reactive and managing your emotions. Any kind of meditation practice, but daily meditation practice. Very easy to do. There's that course in meditation I published on my YouTube channel. So short-term, long-term solution, Vedanta. Short-term solution to reactivity, meditation. Next question from Aditya, lives in Toronto. Recently, Pope Leo, the new Pope in the Roman Catholic Church, gave a encyclical, which is their Latin term for a pronouncement. In fact, encyclical. I don't think we have any, I don't know what to call it in Sanskrit. I think our Muslim friends will call it fatwa. Which means a pronouncement from the head of a religious order that carries significant weight, is what I mean. And I don't mean to offend anyone by comparing it to, anyway. So Aditya says that the Pope's encyclical, some of you know, was about the dangers of AI, artificial intelligence, and that we should all be careful of AI. And Aditya has two questions. First, what is your view of the impact of AI, artificial intelligence, on humanity, and especially under the light of Vedantic doctrines? I don't think Vedanta has anything to do with it. AI is a technology. Is it not? Every technology that has come into existence has been both a blessing and a curse, a good side and a bad side. Think about the a good example, the internet. How much benefit that's brought to our lives. And how many new problems, how much time do you spend answering emails? Now, you didn't have that problem 20 years ago, answering dozens of emails every day. Or think about social media, which is all hosted on the internet, is a big issue for young people. Every technology has two sides. And I don't see AI as being any different. I think AI already is bringing benefits into our lives. I use AI in some of my work. It's a great tool for searching for information. You know, the old search box that you used to get on Google, whatever, it basically looked up words. that's not as useful as it could be. The new AI will look up ideas, much more powerful, much more useful. But like every technology, two sides. And sometimes the downside is pretty frightening. Think about atomic energy as a very stark example of something that has tremendous benefit, at least potential benefit, and tremendous potential for harm. So I think AI will be like nuclear energy, where it has tremendous potential for benefit, tremendous potential for harm, and it depends on how we use it. That's true for any technology, how we use it. People, I think, there's a very strong reaction for some people towards AI, fear. And which is not surprising. People are afraid of the unknown. I think the more you get to know AI, you'll know that it's quite artificial and it's not as intelligent as you thought it was. So I don't think I think the fear that some people feel today, I understand it, but I think it's perhaps out of proportion to the threat. That may change in the future. If AI gets abused, then it's something we have to deal with. It's, I think back to the 80s and 70s and 60s, the Cold War, when Russia and the United States had their finger on that button, ready to obliterate mankind by launching all these nuclear-tipped missiles. It was scary, for a good reason. There was something definitely to be afraid of. Right now, there's no such thing. In the future, there might be. Well, we dealt with the nuclear threat. Not that it's gone, but it's certainly nothing like it was in the 60s and 70s. The live stream just went down. Oh, just came back. There's something funny going on. Yeah, down again. There's a lag. See if it comes in just a moment. About a 7-second lag. Is it continuing? Okay. Okay. So the problem is on this side. That's good. Okay. And it's a little bit, what do they say? Wonky. All right, we'll do the best we can. If it goes really badly, by the way, for our online students, if it goes really badly, I'll post the video recording. We can do that. So if the live really is disrupted. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha moksha yoho. One of my favorite scriptural statements. It says, manas eva, the mind alone, manushyanam, for all people, is the karanam, the cause, bandha moksha yoho, for bondage to suffering, and moksha, freedom from suffering. Brilliant statement, and absolutely true. The problem is here, the solution is here. Your true nature is already Satchidananda Atma. Satchidananda has no problem. Problem is here. Now, Neil's question, if the mind alone is a cause for bondage, and the mind alone is also the cause for liberation, it seems to me then that we're standing on shaky ground. As we all know, no one has a perfect mind, which is true. So how can something imperfect lead to something perfect? It's a good question. I'll address it in just a moment. How can an imperfect mind be the cause for a state of perfection? Seems to be counterintuitive. Okay, there's no state of perfection. The truth of who you already are happens to be perfect. That's not a mental state. Perfection is not a mental state. Perfection is your nature. The nature of Atma, pure consciousness, is already perfect, doesn't need to be made perfect, nor is it a state. The moment you call it a state of perfection, states come and go. States of mind come and go. The perfection of Atma doesn't come and go. But then how can an imperfect mind be the cause for the state of perfection? Enlightenment is not a mental state of perfection. It's not a mental state at all. According to this statement, what does the Amrita Bindu Upanishad say? The mind alone is the cause for bondage and moksha. Now we need more Vedanta to understand that. Not the mind in general. I'm smiling because people love to take things out of context. The literalists, or called fundamentalists. So fundamentalists say, oh, if the mind is the cause for bondage, let me get rid of it. It says the mind is a cause. Again, anyway, you get my point. It's not the mind in general, it's one particular problem in the mind called ignorance, in particular ignorance of your true nature as Satchidananda Atma, what my guru called self-non-recognition. So, you don't need to put your mind in a perfect condition. All you need to do is address that problem of self-non-recognition. Self-non-recognition means self-knowledge. Atma-Vidya, Atma-Jnana, Atma-Bodha. The Guru gave that name to our ashram, Atma-Bodha. So, knowledge is interesting. Can knowledge be perfect? That's a fascinating question. So mind in general can't be perfect, but this is a problem of knowledge and ignorance. In the realm of knowledge and ignorance, can knowledge be perfect? Tell me, 2 + 2 is 4. Is there any error in your knowledge that 2 + 2 is 4? Would you say that's perfect knowledge? How about this? Self-recognition. When you see yourself in the mirror, you recognize yourself. Is that recognition partial or complete? It's complete. There's nothing missing. There's no error in it. So the point is, even though the mind cannot be perfect, knowledge can be perfect insofar as it removes ignorance. Now here's why we say enlightenment is not a state of mind. If enlightenment were a state of mind, you'd have to go on reminding yourself, I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. If enlightenment were a state of mind, that would be required. Not required. Why? Because your true nature is already Brahman, whether you think about it or not. The problem is ignorance. When you remove ignorance, that problem goes away. You don't have to think, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. That self-non-recognition is gone. The self-non-recognition, the ignorance, that was the source of suffering in the first place. When the source of suffering is removed, the problem is not there. And now here's a final point. When ignorance is removed, it's just gone, right? When you learn 2 + 2 is 4, any ignorance about what 2 + 2 is just gone. By the way, do you have to keep reminding yourself 2 + 2 is 4, 2 + 2 is 4? It's not necessary. Your ignorance about 2 + 2 is gone. You don't need to do anything. Knowledge is perfect insofar as it results in the complete absence of ignorance. Absence of ignorance is not a mental state. Okay, for the reasons I just said. Next question from Concha. Concha lives in Spain, and I'll thank Concha online. Concha has been translating the subtitles for many of my videos, translating and providing Spanish subtitles for those videos, and many viewers are grateful for her work, and I'm also grateful. Concha asks, I'd be very grateful if you'd clarify what is darshana. I think that you receive darshana from a deity. That's part of it, and also darshan is to see the deity. Correct. When you receive darshanam, what does that mean? Okay, darshana literally means seeing, and of course it's used in different all Sanskrit words, like all the words, are used in different contexts. We speak of Vedanta as one of 6 darshanas, but that means a philosophical system. So that's a different meaning of the word darshana, of worldview, so to speak. But here we're talking about darshana in a devotional sense, and especially in the sense of going to a temple. You go to a temple for darshana. This is the typical expression. Hindi mein darshan. Same thing. So when you go to the temple for darshan, what happens? Well, some temples, by the way, you know, they close the drapes or close the whole temple at certain times. Some temples, you can't go in at certain times. Other temples, you can go in, but they close the drapes, especially when the food is being offered to the deity, other times also. So then if the temple is closed, or if the drapes are closed, you have to wait there. You say, I'm waiting there for darshan. Okay, so you see the Lord, you see that form on the altar which elevates your mind to appreciate a deity who is far vaster than the one who sits on the altar. We all know that. We're not praying to a marble or granite form on an altar, but rather that form helps us emotionally connect to a deity who is all-powerful and all-pervasive. So, and in order to make that connection very strongly, it's helpful to see physically that deity on the altar. That is the simple meaning of darshana, is to see the deity on the altar. But there's a flip side to it that people don't often think about. The flip side of darshana is you see the deity. In that situation, you are seen by the deity at the same time. Symbolically seen. Of course, you know, Ishvara being all-pervasive, you're never away from Ishvara. It's never that you are unseen. But this is all symbolism. Temples are all symbolism. Wonderful symbolism. So you go into the temple, not only do you see the deity, you are seen by the deity, which means someone's listening, someone's watching over you. And there's so much about the symbolism we could talk about. Just one little bit to share with you is when a temple is consecrated, one of the most important rituals of consecration is called netra unmilana. Netra unmilana. Opening of the eyes of the deity. It is done ritually. So when before the deity is installed, its eyes are closed. And actually, oftentimes the sculptor of the deity will actually leave the eyes unfinished. Oh, what a nice memory. 1986, I was, someplace in South India, and I found, in fact, I'm looking right now at the deity of Sri Rama. It happens to be right there underneath the camera. Sorry, will this show? We don't. I don't know if that will show. No, you can't, for online, I'm afraid you can't see it. So for those of you in the room, the deity of Rama, which is just below the camera, it's a small deity, but it's in granite, which is unusual for a small deity like that to be made in granite. When I purchased it, actually, this is good. I have to say, Indian craftsmen are very clever. They know how to make a sale. So when I expressed some interest, it wasn't cheap in those days, because it's made of granite, after all. It's not made of soapstone. the more effort goes into it. So when I expressed interest in this piece, the sculptor took it. The eyes he had deliberately left unfinished. And while I was there, he took the deity into his lap, took out a chisel, and in my presence, he chiseled in the outline of the eyes, symbolically opening the eyes. You know why I bought it? Obviously, he had me hooked. So I had to buy. I wanted to buy it. It was a lovely piece. I love it even to this day. But that's done in a very important ritualistic manner during the temple consecration ceremonies which take place over 3 days to consecrate a temple. So that opening of the eyes is so powerful symbolically. Not only do we see Bhagavan's form on the altar, but we are seen by Bhagavan. Nice. I'm glad Kancha asked that question. Next question from Jay, who lives in New York. If someone has a strong, nagging desire to do or accomplish something in the material world, should they do it in order to get it out of their system so that they can free up their mind to focus more on spiritual pursuits? You get it? How many people have you heard who have said, I will devote my life to sadhana when I retire? Especially among Indian-born Hindus. This is the most common thing. I will devote my life to sadhana when I retire. When they retire, do they devote their lives to sadhana? Many times they don't. It's an excuse, and a dangerous one. I would argue that sadhana helps you throughout your life. Why wait? To me, that logic doesn't work at all. Sadhana has helped me at every stage in my life. Why would I consider waiting until I'm old and useless? Why not engage in that sadhana at the earliest possible time to be blessed by it? That makes far more sense. That way your whole life will be blessed by sadhana, and when you meet the end of when things get tough, we know at the end of life things can get tough. We deal with physical illness, we deal with death of loved ones, we deal with our own deaths. Wouldn't it be nice to be prepared for that? Well, if you say, I'll do sadhana when I retire, when you retire, then you've got 10 other things you want to do, and the sadhana doesn't take place. In American English, you blew it. And I made reference in I think, prior satsang, or some class recently, to Bhartrahari's comment in his poetry. He said, with regard to waiting on sadhana, his very, very sarcastic saying is, when your house is on fire, it's too late to dig a well. Very vivid metaphor. Okay, I'll take one more question here, and then we'll see if there are any questions locally. Sheila, who lives in Bangalore, asks how to differentiate between obligation and duty. And the meaning and difference, I don't know what you mean by obligation and what you mean, what is duty. I'm not sure. If by obligation you mean what do other people want to do, what do other people expect you to do, I have to read a lot into this because words are so unclear. What is an obligation? What is duty? In fact, let me try to answer Sheila's question by by going beyond these words and comparing two situations. One is social expectations versus your personal responsibility. I think perhaps that's what Sheila meant. These words are unclear, so let's say social expectations versus personal responsibility. Perhaps that's the difference. Obligation is social expectation. You're expected to do certain things. The things you're expected to do are often called obligations. Of course, there are also personal responsibilities. So the differentiation, I think, is clear. You know, you are expected to do certain things, but not necessarily required. Your third cousin is getting married. They may expect you to attend the wedding, but it's not a personal responsibility to attend the wedding. In a very simple way. Of course, many times in life it's much more complicated than that. That's a pretty obvious example. And it's up to you to discern the difference between a social expectation and a personal responsibility. I can't tell you. Every situation is different. Your context, your situation is unique. You're the only person who can determine. This is a social expectation. Is it truly my duty or not? You have to discern that. I can't do that for you. Okay. Do we have any questions here from our local students? Maybe not? Okay, that's fine. We have lots of good questions here. Next question from Kunwar. I think I'm pronouncing that correct. Kunwar says, I'm going to paraphrase a little long, I'm constantly under attack by venomous, violent verbal attacks by someone who is very close. Tough, right? Someone who's very close, we presume a family member, and I'm guessing Kanwar might live in India, where extended families are extremely common. So you end up living with family members, and you may have many family members, and it happens sometimes when there are two people in the same family that don't get along. That shouldn't surprise us, right? I mean, if you say, but we're blood, you know, we're related. Fine, you're related, but people are people. Personality differences can be very strong, very extreme, even from people of the same family. So we shouldn't be surprised when there are conflicts or differences, conflicts between family members. Towards the end, I am fighting, but I'm fighting that. But all this fighting is exhausting. So your family member is vicious to you, and Kanwar is fighting back. Vicious words are going in both directions, we presume. Both options seem silly now. Correct. There's some real wisdom in that statement. You know, fighting, any kind of fighting is silly. And that means not just fighting in the family, but the fighting that's going on in Iran, in Gaza, in Ukraine, in Sudan. Sorry, that, in my view, it is all silly. It's sorry to use, people say I shouldn't say stupid, but I'm saying it's stupid. Idiotic. Anyway, enough. So, what am I to do? We've kind of discussed this already. Long-term solution to reactivity is the Advaita Vedanta sadhana. That takes time. Short-term solution, meditate. I hope Kanwar is engaged in daily meditation. It'll make this difficult situation a little little easier to handle. But I'll go one more step and share. My guru had a nice way of dealing, of coaching people on this in this kind of situation. People that people you can't avoid, people who you're often related to, but people that you just can't get along with. He said, and these are his exact words, some people you have to love from a distance. His exact words. Some people you have to love from a distance. And what he meant, obviously, was to, if somebody is so difficult to deal with, keep physical distance and emotional distance from that person as much as possible. Sometimes it's less possible, but to the extent it's possible, keep physical and emotional distance between you and that person. Difficult situation. I'm sorry for that Kanwar is having this difficulty. Next question from Ram, who lives here in Maryland. Atma is indestructible, no birth or death, etc. Correct. So is it not ironic to say that suicide in Sanskrit is atma-hathya? In Sanskrit, the common term for suicide is atma-hathya, hatya, destruction, killing of atma, self. And he says, is that the correct word? Shouldn't we use something like swayam-hathya or swiya-hathya, using other words other than atma-hathya? Atma-hathya is conventional, and the answer to Ram's question is the word atma has many meanings. All words have many meanings in different contexts. Whether those words are Sanskrit words, Hindi words, English words, Urdu words, Arabic words, all words have different meanings in different contexts. In the Bhagavad Gita, Atma sometimes means pure consciousness. Atma sometimes means Parameshvara, God. Atma sometimes means your sukshma sharira, your mind and sense faculties that travel after death. And in one or two places in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna uses the term Atma in a sense of physical body. That's all in the Bhagavad Gita. Words gain their meaning in context. So in the Sanskrit expression, also used in Hindi, I suppose in other languages, atma-hathya in context is the killing of one's body. Okay, so it's just an issue of language. Next question from Amit, who lives in India. Ishvara created the universe. Isn't that an action? Yeah. Who said that Ishvara didn't act? Will Ishvara not be bound by his own karmic laws? Remember, action is a karma. This is a little detail of the doctrine of karma that people don't generally understand properly. When does an action give rise to karma phala? Karma means action. So the issue then is, when does karma give rise to adrishta karma phala, which means the kinds of karmic results that take place later? When does an action yield karmic results? And the answer is only when those actions are deliberate, willful. Maybe you've heard me give the example. If you step on a bug accidentally and squish it, there's no karmic consequence for that action. But if there's an innocent bug and you smash that guy, you don't need to do that. You know? So that is a willful and harmful deed, and there is a small karmic consequence for smashing that bug. So Ishvara is not like a human being with human-like will who decides to do things. Ishvara is not a human being who says, I'm going to do this. Ishvara does not have will in the human sense. If you say Ishvara, if we want to understand what is Ishvara's will, you may have seen me give this example. It is Ishvara's will, this is a nice metaphor, I like this a lot. It is Ishvara's will that this should accelerate at 9.8 meters per second and fall directly downwards towards the mathematical center of the planet on which we sit. That is Ishvara's will. And notice, it's always the same. You have a will, you change your mind all the time, don't you? You decide you're going to do one thing, you decide to do something else, you decide. Notice Ishvara's will is not fickle like a human being's will. Ishvara's will is utterly unlike a human being's will. So, if the laws of the universe are responsible for the maintenance and destruction of the world, what does Ishvara do in his spare time? And I'm sure Amit is being kind of sarcastic here, figurative, because I'm sure Amit is a long-time student. Amit knows what I just said. Ishvara is not a human being. Ishvara doesn't have spare time. Does he rest like the Christians believe? A reference to the Old Testament or the Bible, which says that God created the world in 6 days and then rested on the 7th. My guru loved to make a joke about this. Why did Ishvara rest on the 7th day? Takkaya. He got tired. My guru's joke, so don't blame me. Okay. Obviously, this is a problem that Christians, Hindus, all religions make the mistake of turning God into some kind of human being. It's a mistake. So, Ishvara doesn't decide that the universe should go into a state of dissolution. Ishvara doesn't decide that the universe should become manifest again. These are not decisions. These are all happening according to laws of karma which are Ishvara's laws, just as the law of gravity. According to the law of gravity, this object falls. According to the laws of karma, the universe goes through cycles of manifestation and dissolution. And these laws are an expression of Ishvara's intelligence. It's not will-based. They're not decisions. Okay, enough said. A couple more questions. Ramachandra. Oh, that's Ram's question. We just saw that, Ram. Next question, and Amit, and here. Marco. Marco lives in Rome. Welcome, Marco. My ishta devata is Lord Shiva. But during my prayer routine, I also thank Sri Krishna for his teachings. I see him as a close friend and guru. And also sometimes I worship Goddess Devi, who I see as mother. I know Ishvara is one, and yet all of this comes naturally to me. Is this all right, or should I focus only on Lord Shiva? What should be your relationship to your ishta devata? Maybe at a younger age, Marco chose Lord Shiva as his ishta devata, which is actually absolutely fine. Marco, I presume, grew up in Italy. Many of you grew up in India, where your family had an ishta devata, and that family, and whatever was the ishta devata, by the way, the chosen form in which you worship God, as ishta devata. So if you grew up in a family that had a particular ishta devata, you may have chosen that same ishta devata, or you may have chosen some other one. So, all of which is fine. Marco's question is, what happens when you find yourself praying to a deity other than your ishta devata? First of all, and I'm sure this is not Marco's question, but let's be very clear, Lord Shiva doesn't get upset when you start praying to another deity. We all understand that's not an issue. What is an issue is if you experience any conflict. There's no should with regard to your ishta devata. Prayer is a matter of the heart. If you are drawn to Lord Shiva at the time of prayer, let your prayers and devotion be towards Lord Shiva. If you're at the moment of prayer, if you're feeling drawn to Lord Krishna or Devi or any other aspect, whatever it is, it's fine. It's whatever helps you the most. And there's no right or wrong here. It's whatever is most helpful, whatever helps invoke the deepest emotional connection. That's the direction to go. And that can change. It can change from when you're young to older. It can change from year to year. It can change day to day. Why not? Let it change. Nothing wrong with that changing. Right? We'll just take one last question here from Amit. Amit lives actually nearby here in New Jersey. Amit asks, in Advaita Vedanta, we place great weight on Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, the essential pillars of Advaita Vedanta, and the rigorous use of reasoning to remove doubt. Yet, in Bhaja Govindam, this wonderful hymn attributed to Adi Shankara, Adi Shankara says that grammar and mere scholarship will not save you at the time of death. Nahi nahi rakshati dukrin karane. Dukrin is it's actually not part of Panini's Ashtadhyayi, his grammar. It's a part of another set of grammar rules that describes the 2,200 verbal roots. Du krin karane. And du is a prefix, krin is the dhatu, the verbal root kr. I'm making a point, but I'm going to bore you with 1 minute of grammar to make a point. Du krin karane means what? Kr is the verbal root kr, to do. And karane is a definition of the verbal root kru, kr, to do. Karane means in the sense of doing. Kr means karane, to do. Du kren is when that verbal root comes into this called dhatu pata, is the list of these 2,200 roots, to differentiate what kind of root it is. We have the prefix du and the affix na. So it becomes du krin karane as one of 2,200 verbal roots enumerated in the dhatu pata, which you need to be able to follow Panini's grammar. Tell me, now that you understand that, how will that help you in your life of spiritual growth? And this is, I'm just making Amit's point here for you. So these are details of grammar. Details of grammar are obviously not going to help you at the time of death, or basically rules of grammar will only help you when you're studying grammar at no other time. Even when you're, by the way, even when you're reading grammar, even when you're reading Sanskrit, the rules of grammar don't help you, because if you're able to read, the rules of grammar have already become transparent. When you're reading English, do you think about English grammar rules? No. The rules become transparent. In the same way, when you've studied enough Sanskrit, grammar becomes transparent. When I read Sanskrit, I'm not thinking about grammar rules. I'm thinking about what the author is teaching. Okay, enough said. So then Amit goes on to say, I understand that these are, that he's talking about logic versus devotion is the context of his question. I understand these are not ultimately opposed, logic and devotion, since devotion purifies the mind for knowledge, and mature knowledge itself ripens into devotion. Nice. I'll say that again. Amit has put it very nicely. Knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and devotion are not mutually opposed. Why? In Amit's words, devotion purifies the mind for knowledge, and mature knowledge itself ripens into devotion. That's nicely put. But I'd like to understand the relationship between the two more deeply. If the path of jnana, knowledge, asks us to reason, why is Shankara warning us about getting lost in words and calling us to bhakti? What is the right relationship? And here we have to understand Shankara. We have to understand the mind of a poet. Bhaja Govindam is a poem. And we don't know for sure that it's written by Shankara. It probably wasn't, just based on my understanding of Shankara's language and style. It doesn't look, what do they say? Doesn't smell like Shankara. Doesn't feel like Shankara. Doesn't sound like Shankara, but it's conventionally attributed to Shankara. There's no reason to doubt the fact that Shankara probably wrote devotional hymns. A hymn like Dakshinamurti Stotra, definitely written by Shankara. Dakshinamurti Stotra is also devotional, but devotional in Shankara's style. Bhaja Govindam is devotional, but not exactly in Shankara's style. But no harm in attributing Bhaja Govindam or anything else to Shankara, no harm. Here's the point though. When we write poetry, don't we give ourselves permission to, let me put it in different words. A poem is meant to convey, not in general. In general, usually, poems are meant to convey emotions. Are they not? Like a song. A song is meant to convey an emotion. A poem is meant to convey an emotion. Shankara's commentaries are not meant to convey emotions. Shankara's texts are not meant to convey emotions. They're meant to teach us. So when Shankara is writing a text like Atma-bodha, when Shankara is writing a commentary like his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, he's not writing to convey an emotion. When Shankara writes a poem like Dakshinamurti Stotra or Bhaja Govindam, he is conveying an emotion. And what is the emotion he's conveying in Bhaja Govindam? The emotion he's conveying is scholarly wisdom, in particular knowledge of Sanskrit grammar. Scholarly knowledge doesn't help you develop bhakti. And at the time of death, when you want to be comforted through prayer, if you haven't cultivated devotion, that won't be available to help you when you want the comfort of heartfelt prayer at the end of your life. If you've spent your whole life learning rules of grammar, then you will not have had the opportunity to develop bhakti, which can bless you, not just at the end of your life, it can bless you throughout your life. So we need to understand the context of a poem. Authors can write different things at different times to make different points, right? So when Shankara is writing, if Shankara wrote Bhaja Govindam, he wasn't trying to convey the highest teachings of Advaita Vedanta. That's not the purpose of Bhaja Govindam. The purpose of that beautiful hymn is to help us cultivate bhakti and make sure that we do so throughout our lives, make sure that we don't get caught up in dry scholarly studies. Good. Very nice questions. We'll conclude today with a prayer. Om sarve bhavantu sukhinaha sarve santu niramayaha sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschya dukkha bhag bhavet asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityorma amritangamaya. Om Shanti 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 Om. That's it. See you next week.